Hello everyone, it's Melanie from Mel's Inky Fingers, and I'm here to share with you how you can maximize the use of your Stampin' Up! Sentiments. Sometimes we want a sentiment on our project, but the sentiment we have in our stamp set is too long, or we don't want all of the sentiment that's included on our stamp. Let me show you how you can maximize the number of sentiments that you can pull from a stamp set by something called masking. Now, masking is when we take either a Post-it note or some Stampin' Up! Masking paper and we cover a portion of the stamp so that when we ink our stamp, we only get a limited amount of the sentiment stamped on our project. So this particular project has just the relax. So let me show you how I did that. Add your stamp to your block and turn it over. Then you can either take a Post-it note or some Stampin' Up! Masking paper, and you can cover the part of the stamp that you don't want to get ink on it. I find that this is a great way to use scraps from my Stampin' Up! Masking paper after I have used it for other purposes. If you have just bits and pieces of the paper left like this, you can trim it to fit on your stamps to cover up what you don't want to have any ink. So I'm just going to carefully place that on my stamp. So now I have relax showing, but I have the ampersand and the word enjoy covered. So now I can take my stamp and ink it up. Now, before you stamp it, remember to pull off this paper. I have been guilty of stamping with that on, and you get a big blotchy mess. Now, when you stamp it, you have a perfectly stamped partial sentiment on your project. Now, sometimes we may want to take a horizontal sentiment like this and make it more of a vertical sentiment. So we can do this technique by first covering half of it like I did. Then I can come over here and cover the other half, and you can reuse this masking paper. It's really great and keeps it stick. So now I can ink up the rest of my sentiment, pull off the masking paper, and now I can shift this over and center it and stamp it below. So now we have used this horizontal sentiment and created more of a vertical sentiment. Now, do you see this little shadow right here? It's really important to clean your stamp really well between each inking if you're going to do this technique. I call this a shadow, and you don't want to get a shadow. So clean your stamp really well, and then I just kind of take my finger and rub it over the stamp like this to get any little residue off so that if I stamp the second part of my stamp, I don't get that little shadow. Now let me share with you a second technique for getting a partial sentiment. I do this a lot. I like to use this end of my ink pad where there's just a tiny bit of case. And I like to just come in with the part of my stamp that I want inked like this and be very careful to not get ink on the part I don't want. This is the lazy way to do this. Now, I don't have my Stampin' Chamois here to clean my stamp, so I'm likely going to get a shadow here. But let me clean that as best I can. Ink that, and then you can stamp and you get the same result without the step of using your masking paper. However, if you are not lazy, I do recommend using either masking paper or a Post-it note to block off the part of the stamp you don't want inked. I hope you find this tip helpful so that you can use all kinds of sentiments to mix and match to make sentiments of your own. For example, you could make just so grateful, exclusive, made just for you, you're fabulous. You can get so many more options out of your stamp sets if you look at your sentiments in terms of the individual words instead of the whole stamp, and use your masking technique to maximize your sentiments. Thanks for watching.